Focus. Use concentration techniques for a sharp memory. Written by Dave Farrell. Narrated by Doug Green. Chapter 1. Why is focusing essential to our well-being? Asking yourself why focus is crucial is a natural thing. Most people at one time or another have wondered about this problem, but fortunately, the answers are rather easy. If you're curious about what makes focus such an important part of most people's lives, here are several reasons. Making focus a more crucial part of your life. Whether it's your personal life or your professional life you're concerned about, it is good to recall that you cannot do much without a little concentration and focus. Several of the reasons why focus is so essential include: without focus, you can't even think. Focus has the capability to change everything about your life. Focus gives you chances you have never ever previously had. It broadens your understanding. It allows you to be more productive. You can achieve success much quicker. It helps you achieve your goals. You also make better choices when you're focused, in part simply because it gives you a better sense of direction. It keeps you motivated, and it is a lot easier to improve your sense of focus than you may think. Truth be told, if you want to add more focus to your life, try the following suggestions. Keep your priorities up to date. Try to focus on only one thing at a time. Read about effective people. Slow down a little and make your life easier. Practice arguing with yourself to get some valuable answers. Think about past choices, both good and bad. Ask yourself why you are pursuing certain goals. Everyone is good at something, and once you turn something you love into your vision and purpose in life, it is much easier to end up being more focused. You also have to know in your heart what you mean, because your values and beliefs are extremely important when you're trying to focus more and achieve certain objectives. What about in the office? Maybe more than wherever else, focus is important in the workplace. If you cannot focus at work, you just can't get things done. Whether you are a short-term worker or the CEO of the company, you need to focus to be effective. If you'd like to enhance your focus at your job, try the following methods. Ensure you are technologically savvy. Make certain your personal workspace is organized and cool. Have your mind on work and nothing else. Remember the 4 parts of organization: perform, process, present, time-wise, and productivity. Whenever you ask yourself why is focus essential, you need to be prepared for the answers, just because they aren't always the answers you were expecting. If you asked 100 effective company people what their guidance is concerning their success, lots of them would react with one word: focus. Focus is simply a should if you want to be successful in the office. If you are having trouble focusing your mind, it could be simply because you need to change some features of how your brain works. These changes include getting rid of everything in your head that isn't crucial at the moment, because focusing on the here and now is important when it comes to the proper focus. And don't worry, because the more you do this, the better you will get at it. Focus and self-discipline. Of course, focus is closely related to self-discipline, which is why you usually read short articles that point out both of these concepts at the exact same time. When you think of the barriers to the process of concentrating on something, the word self-control is normally one of the reasons why people cannot focus. Lack of self-control results in absence of focus, because the two have more in common than you think. People typically can't focus because they are distracted by other things, which is the reason that clearing your mind of unnecessary things is such a great idea when you're attempting to focus. Actually, believe it or not, you can learn how to ignore diversions and control a mind that roams. It just takes practice, because anybody can do it if they try. Other things that can help you focus are understanding when to concentrate on the problem at hand and when to focus on the bigger picture. Try to hold a train of idea even when you get disrupted. Try to follow through on a job without having to request for increasingly more directions. Keep up with a discussion and follow all spoken directions. Things like these are the biggest key to mastering the art of concentration. Aside from practicing the above methods, here are some more pointers for improving your focus and self-discipline. Prepare your schedule ahead of time. Don't multitask unless you really need to. Declutter both your desk and your mind. Take breaks when you need them. Forgive yourself and go on when you ruin. Reward yourself when you do very well. Control both your energy as well as your time. Whether you are an organization executive, a full-time mother, or a student, you need focus and have self-control if you are going to get things done. Fortunately, everybody can accomplish this with a little practice and concentration. You have it in you to do this. All you have to do is look inside of yourself and choose this is how you wish to live. Just what is focus? No conversation of focus can be complete without describing what it means to use the term focus. Basically, focus is having clear objectives and committing your work or personal life to attaining those goals and objectives. You have to make the right decisions at all times, and each decision you make needs to be in relation to your objectives and goals. Think of being focused as being in the moment and nowhere else. When you're focused, you are focusing only on the goal or job at hand and nothing else. You have to consider everything else irrelevant for the moment so that you can commit your concentrated attention to whatever you really need to do to accomplish your goals. The opposite of being focused often spells disaster. Whenever people aren't focused, their lives are dictated by things like whatever is the simplest job, their sense of urgency, and even jobs that just make them look the busiest. Those are the people who concentrate on irrelevant tasks and wind up wasting more time than they should, and this gets those people nowhere at all. Life is loud, busy, and busy these days, which is the reason that so many people are now having problems focusing. Ask yourself, why is focusing essential? Then consider ways you can enhance your focus. Here are some other answers to this all-important question. When you concentrate on a particular job, your brain permits you to focus on that alone. Much better focus also means better efficiency and less tension. Focusing properly means your subconscious will do the effort for you. Focusing permits you to get jobs done faster and with less errors. You can think a lot better when you are more focused. You don't have to let a hectic lifestyle keep you from being concentrated on what you really need to do. Whether you're a teacher, an author, or a seller, focus is important in your life if you want to accomplish anything. It just does not make sense to be unfocused, because everyone is happier, more productive, and is enjoying greater wellness once they learn how to focus correctly. How to start? So you're asking yourself, why is focus essential, but you've never even been focused yourself? No problem. There are, as a matter of fact, ways to help you begin being more focused in your life regardless of where you are now. Below are a few of those ways. Create a comprehensive plan for success. Do not forget to have a fallback. Plan what you will do if you slip up. Don't give up if you get discouraged. Life is filled with those who are making mistakes, and if you're new to the art of focusing, you're going to make those mistakes. Not to worry, though, because you can simply get up and begin all over again. Nobody is 100% focused each minute of the day, but the more you practice these focus-oriented pointers, the easier they will become, and the better you'll get at them. Relating to the plan, it must be as detailed as possible. Why is this the case? The answer is simple. The more detailed your plan is, the more you can focus on it because everything will be laid out step by step. This gives you less of a chance that your mind will roam simply because you'll know at any given time what you're supposed to be doing. When you're trying to focus for the first time, or even refocus on something in your life, it also helps to keep sight of why you are doing what you're doing in the first place. Keep in mind that development isn't an inaccessible goal. Make a list of interruptions and go over them one at a time to try and find out how to remove them from your mind. Figure out if something deeper is going on that's keeping you distracted. If you discover something larger that is the true reason that you can't focus, you need to find out a way to deal with it. It could be something physical and even mental, but as soon as you deal with the real problem, you are far more likely to get better at the focusing game. It also can help a lot if you find a good way to soothe your mind. Routine exercise, healthy eating, and regular meditation all help. The truth is, the calmer your mind is, the more you can deal with the diversions that are usually a part of daily life. A calmer mind also makes it easier to concentrate on things. And since a well-cared-for body accompanies a calmer and more orderly mind, taking care of your body is essential when you're trying to improve your focus. Train your brain to focus. Your brain is not a muscle, but it works similar to your other muscles. It infers that over time, you can train your brain to focus better. How do you do this? You can start by concentrating on one thing and just one thing only for 5 minutes at a time. Keep in mind, no cluttering of the mind. Focus only on one thing. After you've mastered these 5 minutes, strive 10, then 15, and so forth. When you get up to 40 minutes of pure concentration, you'll have prospered in becoming more focused. It's also better if you practice this exercise first thing in the early morning when your brain is refreshed and not filled with unnecessary scrap. This exercise may be hard when you initially start, but it won't be long before you will be performing it with ease. What could be other ways to train your brain to focus better? Here are some. On your list of tasks, do the creative things initially. Choose the toughest jobs during your best times of the day, and only you know when those are. Whether you're an early bird or a night owl, you should do the bulk of your focusing throughout the hours where you are the most alert. After all, not all work is completed throughout work hours. Much of what you'll do will be achieved in the comfort of your home, and only you can know which time of the day works best. Mostly, don't feel guilty if you do not attain the results you were hoping for rapidly. Worry and guilt will get you nowhere. Furthermore, guilt, concern, and guts are all things that can be learned or unlearned, so focus on acquiring courage and eliminating guilt and stress anytime you can. Just like balancing or dancing, focus is a performance-based skill that can be learned with time. You can hope that it will happen somehow, but that will not make it a reality. Rather, focus on ways that you can improve your focus. This generally includes exercises that train your brain to focus better, which is a skill that you can use to improve your life after that. Chapter 2. How to enhance your concentration and memory. Here are 10 basic methods that anyone can use to improve the amount of info that they take in and remember. 1. Get lots of sleep. If you read a book or article when very worn out, you will forget the majority of what you have read. Sleep improves attention and concentration, and therefore the registration of info. And sleep is also needed for memory consolidation. 2. Focus. You can't take in info unless you are focusing, and you can't remember information unless you are taking it in. It helps if you are actually fascinated by the material, so try to develop an interest in every little thing. As Einstein said, there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is like absolutely nothing is a miracle. The other is like every little thing is a miracle. 3. Involve as many senses as you can. For example, if you are being in a lecture, write several notes. If you read a chapter, read it aloud to yourself and inject some drama into your performance. 4. Structure info. If you really need to remember a list of active ingredients, think of them under the subheadings of starter, main, and dessert, and envision the number of active ingredients under each subheading. If you need to remember a phone number, think of it in regard to the first 5 digits, the middle 3 digits, and the last 3 digits, or whatever works best. 5. Process information. If possible, recap the material in your own words, or reorganize it so that it is easier to learn. With more complex material, try to comprehend its meaning and value. Shakespearean actors find it a lot easier to recall their lines if they can comprehend and feel them. If it has to be this way, concentrate on the important things, or the larger picture. In the words of Oscar Wilde, one should take in the color of life, but one should never remember its specifics. Information are always vulgar. 6. Relate information to what you already know. New info is much easier to recall if it can be contextualized. A recent research study looking at the role of high-level procedures found that chess knowledge predicts chess memory of the design of a particular chess game, even after controlling for chess experience. 7. Use mnemonics. Tie info to visual images, sentences, and acronyms. For instance, you may remember that your hairdresser is called Sharon by visualizing a rose of Sharon or Sharon fruit. Or you might remember the colors of the rainbow and their order by the sentence, Richard of York gave battle in vain. Many medics remember the symptoms of varicose veins by the acronym AEIOU, aching, eczema, itching, edema, and ulceration. 8. Rehearse. Sleep on the information and evaluate it the following day, then examine it at increasing periods until you feel comfortable with it. Memories fade if not rehearsed, or are overlain by other memories and can no longer be accessed. 9. Know context. It's much easier to obtain a memory if you find yourself in a similar circumstance or comparable mindset to the one in which the memory was laid. Most people with low mood tend to remember their losses and failures while ignoring their strengths and accomplishments. If one day you pass the cheesemonger in the street, you may not, without her normal apron and range of cheeses, instantly recognize her, despite the fact that you are otherwise familiar with her. You might even say something like, "Ma'am, please remind me, where do I know you from?" If you are preparing for a test, try to recreate the conditions of the exam. For example, sit at a similar desk at a similar time of day and use ink on paper. 10. Be as creative as possible. Strange or uncommon experiences, facts, and associations are much easier to remember. Because unfamiliar experiences stick in the mind, journeys and holidays give the impression of living, and, by extension, of having actually lived for longer. Chapter 3. How to concentrate better when you're working at home. Lots of us are attempting to work from home, perhaps with kids jumping around. If you're having a hard time to focus, here are some suggestions. 1. Understand the developed basis of why it's hard to focus when dealing with threats and uncertainty. Anxiety and unpredictability make us feel on edge. They're states of high alert. If you think in evolutionary terms, being able to quickly redirect our attention away from the hazard and deeply focus on other subjects and jobs would not have been valuable for our survival. For this reason, under conditions of hazard and unpredictability, we're wired to find it hard to reroute our attention and get soaked up thinking of safe subjects, meaning read an enjoyable novel or a dense document for work. In evolutionary terms, your on-edge, hyper-alert feelings and your distracted cognitive state are a function, not a bug. 2. Recognize that you're missing the hints that help you focus. I actually work from home all of the time. Thus, I have routines of working that help trigger my ability to focus. My brain knows that me sitting in bed and opening my computer system means I will do a number of hours of writing and/or reading studies. If you usually work in an office, the routines and cues you have at work that signal to your brain that you're going to be beginning a session of concentrated work like taking the elevator up to your office aren't there. This is another aspect that is very likely to be making it hard for you to focus and focus on work. 3. Consider not trying to work at 100%. Just 60% may be more sensible. It always turns out that way anyway. Some of your cognitive and emotional resources right now are being utilized handling the fact that we're all facing a pandemic. It is rather impractical to believe that the formula will look like this. You at 100%, minus whatever cognitive and psychological resources you're using dealing with coronavirus, equals you're still at 100%. People in emergency situation response roles could be able to operate at near to 100% just because they are conditioned and trained for this, and because they are straight focused on instant needs. If you're doing knowledge work unassociated to the crisis, your cave person brain is most likely pretty confused about why you're asking it to continue just as if nothing is happening. Pick your own number for what you expect your functional capacity to be, but don't pick 100%. 4. You should try alleviating into work with some admin jobs rather than attempting your hardest work first. If I'm having a tough time settling to concentrate on exertion, specifically if I have been staying away from it, I usually find the simplest way is to use straightforward tasks to help settle me into it. If you're having a tough time focusing, try easy, straightforward tasks for 30 to 60 minutes first. 5. Do not try to anticipate whether you'll have an efficient work session. I've learned a lot from tracking my productivity that the state of mind I start my work in doesn't determine how my session of work goes. In case I am feeling restless or vulnerable, it typically just takes me a bit longer to find my rhythm, but I am still just as likely to do good work. If you can begin with your deep work, then your conditioned cues connected with being in a focusing state, as opposed to those that kick it off, will tend to take over. It may take 15 to 30 minutes after you begin deep work to feel like it is working out. This resembles how, if you go for a run when you're not feeling like it, you're likely to begin feeling good after several minutes. For example, if you write reports for your job and you have written lots of them, then once you enter into the flow, your brain knows what order you generally write the different sections in and so forth, and that conditioning will take over. 6. Give yourself a very good healing period after working. If you've effectively focused on deep work for a couple of hours, give yourself some good recovery. If you have kids at home, your healing could need to be with your children. For example, one of my healing regimens is to draw with my kid once a day. We generally cut an image from a magazine for motivation. We've also been practicing camping with a camping tent in the yard, complete with marshmallows, etc. Other alternatives are things like jigsaw puzzles or baking. Do not think you need to escape your kids to unwind. You should try creativity activities with them. This 20-minute corrective yoga regimen is one of my go-tos for when I really need sturdy recovery. Restorative yoga is quite different from exercise-orientated yoga. It's basically supported lying down. In some cases, my kid will do it with me. At times, she'll jump on me while I am trying to do it. 7. Don't watch or read news for hours and hours every day. Since coronavirus is a fast-moving story, it's easy to understand that you might want to be watching or reading coverage of it for a number of hours a day. Still, watching and reading 3, 4, 5, or 7 hours a day, as some people are, is excessive. Extreme news direct exposure won't help you focus on work. 8. Neglect messages that you should use your time at home to be hyperproductive. If you want to do some projects while you're at home, that's fine. If you'd like to read some books you've been trying to navigate to forever, that's fine. If you wish to declutter your linen cupboard, that is fine. Do what helps you. Still, don't put unneeded pressure on yourself to get things done beyond what you need to, if that does not feel handy. In some cases, it is better to resist messages that the solution to any dilemma, personal or common, is to be hyperproductive. Chapter 4. The 4 Major Motivations. Motivation is difficult to come by. There's always another task, another project, another objective. And any inspiration you manage to scrape together for one thing is missing for the next. But inspiration is not a resource, at the very least, not in the way the language surrounding motivation suggests. Inspiration is a reaction to stimuli, and that reaction isn't always the same. Various stimuli activate different parts of the brain and encourage us toward efficiency in different ways. So rather than longing for inspiration or searching for more inspiration, it might be more valuable to think of the different kinds of motivators we experience and what is going on in our brains when we experience them. The fundamental science of inspiration. For many years, neuroscientists and psychologists have developed that we usually experience inspiration when dopamine, a neurotransmitter that communicates signals between brain cells, is released and takes a trip to the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is a region of the brain that mediates reward behavior. So when dopamine reaches the nucleus accumbens, it solicits feedback on whether an advantage or a bad thing is going to happen. As Kimberly Schaffenbuhl, program director of UNC Executive Development, explains, this prediction prompts us to react in ways that either lessen a forecasted threat, the bad, or take full advantage of an anticipated reward, the good. So if you get an email from your boss with a new assignment, dopamine hits up the nucleus accumbens to form a prediction of what will happen if you do the task or not, or if you do it well or inadequately. With that forecast in place, you'll either act to increase the likelihood of reward, payment, praise, sense of achievement, or reduce the probability of punishment, demotion, screaming, sense of failure. Let's take a look at our 4 motivators for efficiency and see what truly drives us. Imaginative expression. In writing this book, I'm inspired by creative expression. It gives me a chance to flex my creative muscles and express myself through prose and storytelling. But what's going on in my brain while I am writing? When you're inspired to productivity via creative expression, it's likely that one of 2 things is going on. 1. You are in the zone. This is the colloquial term that's being used to define an uninhibited creative flow in which it appears as if you're not even thinking about what you're doing. When you're in the zone, an area of the brain called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, DLPFC, becomes less active. Research conducted by neuroscientists Dr. Charles Lim and Dr. Alan Braun connects the DLPFC to planning, inhibition, and self-censorship. And that makes sense, thinking about that those qualities are almost antithetical to uninhibited creative flow. When moderating a rush of ideas, there is no time to evaluate or organize. Planning and censoring only obstruct your goals. 2. You're systematically shaping. Most creativity results in difficult, complex, tedious work, and at the time of these pre- or post-zone creative sessions, activity in the DLPFC can actually ramp up, specifically if you are examining or editing. That is simply because creative expression generally involves a balance of uninhibited flow and methodical sculpting. Similar to the well-known piece of writing wisdom, write intoxicated, modify sober, a good book or moving song is usually the item of both stream of consciousness inspiration and meticulous workmanship. Conclusion: being motivated by creative expression can lead to an arranged delivery of new, unexpected, and imaginative ideas. Financial incentive. It would be deceitful to say that I'm not also motivated by payment. Our brains look extremely different when inspired by monetary settlement, and just as different types of creative expression are associated with different neurochemical processes, so are different kinds of financial rewards, specifically wage versus added reward. 1. Motivation from income. Money can definitely inspire us to performance. Anybody with a job can tell you that. However, extrinsic motivators like wage work best when paired with other more intrinsic motivators. Edward Deci, a psychologist at Rochester University, says that we have 3 psychological needs that help supplement monetary inspiration: autonomy, proficiency, and the sense of feeling connected to others. Wage alone does not motivate us, Deci says. Truth be told, he argues, overemphasis on monetary benefit undermines independence, and because of that intrinsic motivation. 2. You're methodically shaping. Most employers offer added monetary incentives such as commission and bonuses. If you perform to X level, you get Y additional money. Even if you're already motivated by a healthy balance of intrinsic and extrinsic elements, things change when these performance-based financial rewards are introduced. In a study led by Dan Ariely of Duke University, scientists asked individuals to play games that tested memory, creativity, and motor skills. They would each get a monetary reward based on their performance, but one group was offered a little reward, another a medium reward, and another a huge benefit. The study found that individuals who were offered the largest amount of cash performed the worst. Ariely concluded that while performance-related benefits normally increase activity in parts of the brain involved in inspiration, there comes a tipping point. When the potential reward is too large, it can weaken performance by making people overly focused or psychologically aroused. Conclusion: being motivated by an excessively large monetary incentive can lead to a mistake-riddled item, while a reasonably sized monetary incentive, paired with intrinsic motivators, can lead to something more thoughtful and polished. Curiosity in learning. Interest and the desire to learn are simply intrinsic motivators. According to Domenico and Ryan, we are inspired towards productivity by curiosity in learning when we encounter new kinds of stimuli that present ideal difficulties or optimal inconsistencies with a person's extant knowledge. We want to investigate things that we don't understand, or things that run counter to our experiences. This clarifies why, for example, someone may hear a ringing payphone and answer it. So, what's going on in the brain here? Dopamine, as with nearly all kinds of inspiration, plays an essential role when inspired by curiosity and learning. And dopamine nerve cells tend to show two modes of activity: tonic and phasic. When dopamine remains in tonic mode, neurons fire at a consistent rate, showing what Domenico and Ryan call the general strength of animals' probing-seeking tendencies. When we are in tonic mode, we may be walking around smelling things, taking a look at things, listening to things. Normal human stuff. In phasic mode, nerve cells experience brief bursts of activity or inactivity in reaction to specific stimuli, resulting in a boost or decline of dopamine, generally lasting some seconds. Whereas in tonic mode, you could be forced to glance at an uncommon-looking tree. A strange noise from its branches might activate phasic mode, and suddenly you're inching to that tree, eager to find the source of the noise. Conclusion: being motivated by interest in learning can result in a more thorough investigation of ideas and a more expanded final product. Worry. What if I woke up thinking this post was due into my editor tomorrow, only to recognize the due date was in 2 hours? Worry would ensue, and that fear would encourage me to do whatever it took to reduce the possibility of that bad thing happening. Worry usually drives you to productivity because you want to keep from a risk or penalty. And while a due in 2 hours fear could not reach the level of fear you experience when a grizzly charges at you, it does trigger a similar neurochemical reaction. The amygdala, a part of the brain critical in the development of memories, processing emotions, and making decisions, goes crazy. And when it discovers danger, it sends your body into fight-or-flight mode, at the time of which survival is prioritized above all else. But simply because you're being efficient in this moment of fear does not mean you're producing something of quality. When fear kicks in, most of the brain's resources are diverted from their normal jobs to perform that survival function. So when fear pirates your brain, it can endanger your choice-making. Worry might inspire you to work harder or work more, but when fear is the dominant incentive, intrinsic inspiration is absolutely nowhere to be found. There is no room for creative expression or interest in learning, and without them there's no desire to look for new info or let ideas flow through you naturally. So, while the work could be completed, it won't be as well-rounded. More likely, it will just expose your seriousness to just get it done. Conclusion: being inspired by fear can result in a lower quality, though without delay provided, item. Each of these motivators has the capability to propel you towards productivity, but the result of that efficiency will not always be the same. But if we recognize why we're inspired to performance, we may be able to identify how we work best and what kind of inspiration produces the best results. Chapter 5. Conceptualizing is destroying your creativeness. In a common brainstorming session, you try to solve a difficulty by collecting a team to create new ideas. While it sounds logical, this approach is actually swarming with problems, like social loafing, cruising on others' contributions, and social anxiety about having your ideas judged. That can impede original thinking and stifle introverted team members, according to a short article released in Harvard Business Review. Instead of looking for answers, you should be conceptualizing for questions, says Hal Gregerson, executive director of the MIT Leadership Center and MIT Sloan professor. The very best leaders in this world ask better questions, creating conditions and situations that cause them to be wrong or awkward and silent, he says. When that happens, they wind up being almost forced to ask things others would not ask. Coming up with questions enables you to check out an issue more deeply, pushing past biases and arriving in uncharted territories, says Gregerson, author of Questions Are the Answer. He uses a 3-step process that he calls Question Burst that establishes conditions to harness the power of questions. Set the stage. Start by recognizing a challenge you care deeply about, like growing your organization into a new category or going into a prospective collaboration. If it makes your heart beat quicker, it is most likely a good candidate, Intuit Chairman and CEO Brad Smith told Gregerson. You can do a question burst on your own, but bringing others into the process will give you access to a broader knowledge base and help you maintain a positive mindset. It's best to include 2 or 3 people who have no direct experience with the problem and whose cognitive style or worldview is starkly different from yours, says Gregerson. They will come up with surprising, compelling questions that you would not, because they have no practiced ways of thinking of the issue and no investment in the status quo. Once you have gathered your team, describe the issue in 2 minutes, quickly sharing why you're stuck. Providing a short introduction forces you to frame it in a way that will not direct questioning. Then share Gregerson's 2 rules. No one can answer any of these questions. Nobody can clarify exactly why you are asking the question. Both of those things walk the other person into a corner about how you already see the problem, which is the reason why you are stuck anyhow, says Gregerson. Brainstorm the questions. Set a timer for 4 minutes and generate as many questions as possible about the challenge. The focus is on quantity over quality, and the group needs to pursue at least 15 questions. The more unexpected and provocative the questions are, the better they are, Gregerson says. Record them verbatim. When dealing with big business, I usually notice that senior leaders in particular find it extremely tough to withstand offering answers, even for 4 minutes, when people begin throwing out questions, he says. This impulse is comprehensive and not just for senior executives. In a hierarchy, any manager's failure to have all set answers might be perceived as an embarrassing stumble. Gregerson says 4 minutes isn't a very hard rule, but the reduced time does put pressure on participants to stay with the questions-only rule. It also helps address attention span issues. Recognize a resulting quest. After the question burst is over, examine the questions, looking for those that cause you to recognize you're a bit wrong or make you a bit uncomfortable. Those are most likely offensive questions that were poking at a presumption, says Gregerson. It's like, I didn't quite see it that way. Maybe if I got a much better answer to this question, I could get a resolution. Questions that make you uncomfortable are a little more emotional, says Gregerson. It is like there's something maybe even unconscious going on here, but it's signifying to me this is a crucial question, he says. Then make these particular questions part of your quest. These are questions that are worth getting answers to, says Gregerson. Put yourself in some conditions that will get you better answers and better questions. Talk to some people who are different from you. And put yourself in places that are a bit uncommon, so as to continue to get a lot better answers and options. Commit to pursuing at the very least one new path you have obtained from the question burst process. The results. After doing the process with more than 10,000 leaders everywhere in the world, including but not limited to at firms like Chanel, Disney, and Salesforce, Gregerson has collected 1,500 information points and learned that 80% of the people who shared the challenge felt at least a little bit better mentally. And that's not insignificant, he says. There's been amazing work done by Harvard Company School professor Teresa Amabile in Harvard over the decades that says when we are in a positive emotional space, we are more likely to get a whole new idea, and I would say a new question. So this approach essentially helps people relocate to a much better emotion. When people feel worse, Gregerson says it's usually because they've realized that they're more of the problem than they realized, or that the problem is bigger than they thought it was. Both of those things aren't bad, he states. It's better to understand sooner than later that I become part of the issue, and the issue is larger than I thought it was. It just helps me improve it. In 80% of the sessions, question bursts help reframe an issue, says Gregerson. As we try to get a final good answer to a thing we're stuck on, what we are doing is reframing and reframing, he says. The questions are reframing the problem and reframing our questions. It's remarkable that a brief 4-minute period can unlock us mentally and intellectually, and begin us down a somewhat different path. This is not about asking questions for questioning's sake. That is just people attempting to be creative, and they are extremely bothersome, says Gregerson. This is all about asking a lot of questions to find better questions. Chapter 6. How to Avoid Shiny Object Syndrome. As a business owner juggling several obligations, you will likely find that any illness will seriously set you back temporarily while you recover. But there's one that might have powerful, lasting impacts on your organization and extend far past a simple day or more of absence. It's called Shiny Object Syndrome, and if it's afflicting you, you will need to do something about it if you want your service to thrive. Shiny Object Syndrome in action. At its core, Shiny Object Syndrome is a disease of interruption, and it influences business owners specifically simply because of the qualities that make them special. Business owners have a tendency to be highly motivated. They long for new technology and new developments, and they're not afraid to start new projects and create new things. Ordinarily, these are great qualities, but when Shiny Object Syndrome sets in, it forces you to chase after project after job, and change after change, never settling with one option. It's called Shiny Object Syndrome because it is the entrepreneurial equivalent of a small child chasing after shiny things. Once they arrive and see what the object is, they immediately lose interest and start chasing the next thing. For entrepreneurs, rather than actual shiny objects, they may be company objectives, marketing techniques, clients, or perhaps other business endeavors. When the syndrome gets bad. Wishing to keep your organization upgraded and staying abreast of new possibilities aren't inherently bad goals. Having said that, when the Shiny Object Syndrome becomes widespread, entrepreneurs experience some or all of these serious disadvantages. Failure to finish projects. When you get excited about a new task before your first one is complete, you may jump ship before you can see any significant results. For instance, if you invest in a search engine optimization technique for a month or two, then switch to a different method altogether, you'll never ever get to see the long-term advantages of keeping a SEO technique properly. Improperly planning your ideas and directives. Most people with Shiny Object Syndrome tend to focus on the novelty of pursuing a given method or making a particular change, rather than the technique or change itself. For example, they may really love the idea of developing a new product and start work on developing it, but with no long-term game plan on how to follow through on that idea. This leads to underdeveloped executions and latent potential. Burning through money. There are hundreds of technical tools for businesses that are impressive, efficient, and totally fun to use. Regrettably, if you sign up for all those services, or you jump from platform to platform, you will end up burning through so much cash that these tools become extremely cost inefficient. Confusing your staff. You aren't the only one impacted by your choices and continuously rotating momentum. If you change your business's direction too frequently, your staffers will not be able to keep up. They'll see projects they are working on all of a sudden become unimportant when a new detail emerges, or see their goals shift almost unpredictably. With time, this can cause serious disruptions in employee loyalty and performance. You just had the most brilliant idea and you think it is now or never ever that you begin working on it, so you hit the gas and drive with full speed into it. Not some months in and you recognize the idea wasn't as fantastic in practice as it was in your head. But hey, wait, what occurred? Shiny object syndrome, that's all. Shiny object syndrome is what occurred. First, let's get this straight. We've all been there regardless of the field we come from. We see a shiny object and chase it without thinking it through. I've waited over 4 years for news on Sabaa Tahir's novel, An Ember in the Ashes, becoming a movie. But it seems home entertainment giants saw the bestseller novel as a shiny object and instantly claimed that'd make a film adaptation without first analyzing the idea. Some people say about this syndrome that we fall in love with the idea of something and shirk the boring process of persevering to the bitter end, as Ryan Law, the content strategist at Animals, defines it. So you press the start button without seeing what lies beyond. Naturally, there's a likelihood you end up feeling lost along the way and hit an unplanned stop. The end results, you ask? Wasted time and resources just because you didn't move with a plan to navigate from point A to point B, not to mention the point Z. And normally in hindsight, you recognize that your original plan before you got distracted by the shiny object was a great one, had you only followed through and stuck it out till your efforts bore fruit. Shiny object syndrome psychology, diving into the roots. Let's get this straight first. Shiny object syndrome is not a medical syndrome as such. It's a name given to a condition that is pretty typical among several entrepreneurs and creatives. Paymonteai, the creator of Visme, a DIY design tool, suggests the syndrome usually occurs as a result of 3 reasons. You're young and brief on experience, so everything that looks and sounds good appears like it's the best idea in the world. Fear of missing out. You fear you are missing out on success, the trends, and more. You haven't found your true passion yet. These are all sturdy reasons. Our research at F4S highlights shiny object syndrome also originates from high initiation, a strength that's inherent among business owners, leaders, and creative types. Successful business owners have high initiation, that is, they take ideas and run with them. Instead of miss out on chances or linger for others to start, they begin putting the wheels in motion. Yet if the motivation to start has reached giant proportions, it can usually manifest as a lack of focus, something critical in completing the essential jobs needed when getting a venture off and racing. But that's not all. SOS's roots also go into another psychological construct, impulsivity, or tendency to act upon impulse with little to no forethought. While impulsivity is among the significant forces behind entrepreneurial success and creative genius, it comes with a catch. You can rapidly lose control or, like we are talking about, get sidetracked by yet another bright object before you have made any real development. How to tell if you're affected? Shiny object symptoms. Fortunately, self-diagnosis here isn't brain surgery. Run through the following 3-symptom list. 1. You're living the bunny life. You're mindlessly leaping from one task to another, presuming each presents a larger, better alternative for you than the previous. This bunny life was my requirement when I began as a freelance writer. I couldn't select my niche, so I jumped from health science to nourishment to tech, all within 6 months. 2. A sense of obsession and shame drive your pursuit for bright items. This symptom is courtesy of Ryan Law. He discloses, "In the past, I've carried with me this shapeless, uncertain guilt that there was something larger, better, and more amazing for me to work on just around the corner." 3. You see physical hallmarks of the condition. Unused plugins, incomplete courses, and as Ryan suggests, dozens of unused domains. Trello boards and idea projects full of half-finished thoughts. You might even start feeling overloaded and stressed out by how many projects you are in the middle of without getting any of the dopamine-boosting results of having completed any of them. Did you mark off one or all 3 of these tips? Great, let's get you sorted, but before that, let's understand the magnitude of the circumstance. 4 big results of shiny object syndrome. How does it impact you? 1. You do not hit your objectives. When I chase after an intense object without thinking about consequences, what it would take to drive it through to the end, or how the task aligns with my overarching life objectives, I often hit a dead end, and this happens way more quickly than I would like to admit. But that is only one of SOS's natural results. The new idea sucks time, attention, and other resources. Plus, since there's no plan B supported or what you do when you encounter a difficulty or two, you call it quits faster than you can peel an orange. Count this as the leading effect of shiny object syndrome. You can also bet your core value or primary objective in life would suffer as you focus your attention and resources elsewhere. 2. A dish for a health disaster. Since shiny object syndrome and fear of missing out correlate, expect stress, tiredness, and sleep problems on your plate as well, the direct results of the feared fear of missing out. Side note, you are much more likely to experience shiny object syndrome and fear of missing out concurrently if you have a high motivation for distinction. You can discover if that's one of your leading work inspirations and get some professional tips once you take the free F4S assessment. 3. Your productivity tanks. And performance? It takes a hit too. All thanks to your propensity to advance with a venture. Read shiny object. After you have invested your time, money, or any other resource in it. Technically, researchers call this tendency sunk cost fallacy. 4. You are confusing your team that works with you. Not to forget, if you're at the management helm, your streak of racing behind bright objects can trigger tension to your employees. You say your primary target is A one day, but the next, you throw a flourishing speech around how the team needs to set its eye on target B as their main objective. As a matter of fact, such trade-off between objectives is a leading cause of work environment tension, according to 41% of employees. Aren't these way too many negative impacts? If you're already just wondering how to overcome shiny object syndrome, you're on the right course. Let's talk about that next. How to get rid of shiny object syndrome? Consider these 4 things first. Fortunately, there's a solution to this wild goose chase. However, before we dive into the ways you can fight shiny object syndrome, let's be clear about a few things first. 1. Understand yourself and the way you work. As an imaginative leader or business owner, it is only natural you feel like your mind is flooded with ideas that ask to be launched. That's the high initiation within you that's hard at work. But you really need to understand more about yourself. Ideally, a mix of initiation, reflection, patience, and dedication is great. Reflection means you stop briefly and think through before you take action, and initiation means you've what it requires to an idea and execute it. But execution isn't all. Do you have what it requires to see the project or idea through to the end? And that's where commitment comes into the picture. Plus, you need some amount of patience to attain your goals. You do not want to overthink every little thing while failing to act, but here are some circumstances where patience comes inconvenient. When thinking about how the shiny object fits into your overarching goals. While screening and repeating your idea. While working to results. Many initiatives require time to nurture, like in marketing, for instance. Changing tactics or abandoning the plan midway will totally kill chances of any long-term benefits, so know this. 2. Understand that not every pattern is the future or next best thing to do. Sure, almost every trend looks legit when it initially hits the spotlight, but not each plan is definitely worth pursuing for your service. This is where it is crucial for you to understand your personal and professional objectives, along with your unique work motivations, so you can quickly identify if a new chance is a good fit for you and something you can actually commit to for a substantial time period. 3. Fear of missing out is real, and you're not fear of missing out proof. Acknowledge and comprehend that you're not unsusceptible to fear of missing out and that you may be chasing a shiny object just because everyone else is doing it. I should too. Paymont contributes to this. You see others around you have success. Social influencers and startup founders are fast to make social updates on how their idea got popularity. Basically, you hear so much about their success that you feel a sense of pressure or motivation that you can do X, Y, and Z too. 4. Hypergrowth isn't king. There's a basic consensus in the biz community that chasing after an idea such as hypergrowth can lead you right into the shiny object syndrome den. LinkedIn CEO Jeff Weiner opines that firms that differ from their core value proposal typically wind up pressurized. Weiner explains they draw resources away from the core, your unique selling point or primary goal, too quickly in pursuit of the next bright, shiny object. But then you really need to draw your resources back from the shining plan to the core in response to market competition. Not only does that hurt your market position, but you end up stressed out and whipsawed. Here are 6 simple steps to prevent shiny object syndrome from winning. 1. Weigh the shiny object. Put on your thinking hat. When an idea first steps through your brain's front door, don't welcome it with open arms. Instead, look it down with suspicion at first. Have a cuppa with the idea and scan it top to bottom before choosing if you should sit with it for dinner. Some choose to call this sleeping on the idea or giving yourself some thinking time. The fact is, any idea that sticks to you post the 24-hour think period is typically worth considering farther. Go on to shift the plan to paper from your mind. But before that, answer some questions truthfully. 2. Ask the right questions so you can see through the shiny object's flesh. Asking the right questions can help you examine a shiny object before you take the ball and begin running with it. Ryan Law advises, determine which projects are the greatest leverage, which will earn the most money or create the greatest sense of fulfillment or most improve your career. Answer that question, and you'll expose the handful of projects that are worth it. Other questions that you could ask yourself are the following. Do I really have the time and resources to work on this idea? How does it benefit my organization or team or customers or clients? Does this fit with my inspirations? Does this add value to my work or does it spit up others' plans? Is the idea's ROI worth making the investment into? Ensure you comprehend the breadth of the work that'll get into this new shiny object before committing to it, and define completion beforehand. Many projects track off into obscurity simply because we never ever take the time to specify precisely what completion looks like, in Ryan's words. If you run a team, you can also let your teammates have a crack at the idea, then go back and reanalyze. What does everybody think? Is everyone on board with the idea? Prepare a reliable pros and cons list to visualize the idea's worth and decide accordingly. 3. Return to your objectives and see if the shiny object suits the grand plan of things. Revisit your objective board. If you don't have one, I suggest you begin with making one so things are out in the open for you to see how the shiny object fits into your big picture. There's another useful way, the Warren Buffett way, to go about doing this also. Buffett suggests a 3-step exercise. He originally shared it with his pilot, Mike Flint. Make a list of your top 25 career objectives, or organization goals in this case. Review this list and choose your top 5 objectives from the overall 25 goals. Start working on the top 5 goals list. As for the staying 20, Warren suggests you overlook them like the plague epidemic. That is your avoid-at-all-costs list. Wondering why? It's to maintain your focus and stop your brain from skittering around the shiny object land. When an occasional idea for something new does appear, run it through your approval survey like the one above and your top 5 goals list. If it seems worth it, sit with the idea and get to know it some before calling the shots. 4. Focus on, focus on, focus on. This someone's carefully connects to reviewing your objectives and is a hat pointer to Ryan. Essentially, what you have got to understand is everything you do has an opportunity cost. Time spent on one project is, by requirement, time not spent on something else. That awareness encourages a ruthless prioritization. You're busy. Realistically, you can focus on a handful of big projects at any one time, and anything else is actively harming the success of those projects. That really clarifies things, doesn't it? The question now is, how do you focus on? Should you return to the drawing board? Yeah, that is one way, but there's another one too. Ask yourself, if I passed away tomorrow, which of these projects would grieve not finishing? At first glance, it may seem a bit harsh, but it is an efficient, faster way to prioritize essential projects in your life. For me, that was having a profession in writing. For Ryan Law, it was writing a novel. 5. Investigate the shiny idea to discover its potential farther. What if a shiny object emerges successful from your thinking time, meaning it makes it through your approval questionnaire and even suits the big picture or top 5 goal lists? Time to host a launch party? Nope. Now is the time when you look into the idea. When you analyze an idea, you put it to roast in your head, where you turn corners and see if it has some potential. But that is all in your mind. Real value appears when you look into the idea. What place does it have in your market? How will your customers respond to it? How realistically can you expect outcomes? And research study if there is a way you can make the idea unique to your organization. Hashtag brainstorming sessions for the win. What's more, make certain you're not going after the shiny object simply because everybody else is. Hi, this is your Captain Fear of Missing Out speaking. A caveat. Essential note. F4S research realized that entrepreneur success and spending way too much time researching an idea do not go hand in hand. Fasting to act actually correlates with better startup outcomes. But there is such a thing as way too much initiation, especially if you're not an entrepreneur. And if you're still reading at this point, it's probably fair to presume this is something you're struggling with. An example. I have always been attracted to Instagram for business. It is the extremely definition of a shiny object that keeps turning up in my radar, sometimes taking the central spot, and generally trying to get my attention from the edges. Heck, I even got up one night to create a Trello board filled with cards with my ideas for the kind of posts I could make on IG. A few days down the line, though, I looked into the time it takes to develop stunning visuals, techniques that work on the social media network, and the normal ROI of Instagram for somebody in my field. In the end, I let that Trello board sit there, and I am happy, simply because, reasonably speaking, the endeavor would have been a time waster and psychological energy for me. So I let that idea be. I didn't succumb to shiny object syndrome. Ends up, the world has not been tore apart simply because I didn't follow that one idea. 6. Take your shiny object out for a small drive. So you are seeing potential value in this new idea. What now? Whenever possible, create a wireframe or MVP, minimal feasible item, a little model of the real version, and test it. If you see results, you can scale the process. For example, you think it's a really good idea to offer a totally free course for your audience. So you are planning to develop a completely free online course on, let's say, how not to hustle. The proper way to tackle doing this is writing a post, your MVP, on the topic first. Your post needs to briefly clarify ways to slow down. After that, share this with a group of your trusted audience, see how they react, and request for their feedback. If the reaction is positive and they have questions that suggest they would like even more information on the subject, you can start working on the idea further, creating a course that incorporates feedback from your beta group and goes extensive into the topic. Final thoughts on how to avoid shiny object syndrome. So you have a strategy to conquer shiny object syndrome. However, how do you block it completely? Here's a summary of ideas to get you back on track rapidly. Limit the number of projects you can work on at a time. This way you will not have the mental space to captivate any new idea. Reduce the time you spend on social networks. It can be a very real liar, faking others' success and also inducing fear of missing out. Make a list of effective projects, the stages it went through from ideation to execution to completion. When you have a record with you, you will know precisely how much dedication you need to hold up against difficulties that come as you turn a new shiny object into success. Find your true calling, like Paimon found Visme, and stick with it. Break this long-term goal into short objectives and work on them without looking left or right. Use an app like F4S to help you increase your inspiration for accomplishing goals. After that, even if you do get the impulse to start a random new job, your drive to attain your original goal will hopefully outweigh it, keeping you in the right direction. This has been Focus. Use concentration techniques for a sharp memory. Written by Dave Farrell. Narrated by Doug Green.